Now, I'm convinced that the way we are to understand Revelation chapter 11 should not depart from the way that we've understood Revelation chapter 1 through 10. Take, for instance, when we read in Revelation 4 of a lamb that looked as if it had been slain, with 7 horns and 7 eyes. I don't think that what John is telling us is that somehow Jesus abandoned his incarnate human form and began a new existence as that of a particularly weird-looking slaughtered lamb. It's what the symbol points to and represents that matters. We're not there yet, but I would say the same thing about the sharp sword that proceeds from Jesus' mouth in Revelation 19. These things are not to be interpreted literally, but they are to be taken seriously. Apocalyptic literature, as we've seen again and again, employs rich symbolic imagery in order to convey a message that simple prose could not. We just saw in Revelation 11, verse 1, that John was given a reed like a measuring rod, and was told, go and measure the temple of God and the altar with its worshipers. Now, the point of this is not the actual distance, as if we were to be drawing up a blueprint. In the Old Testament, when prophets took the measuring of something, it symbolically represented protection or judgment. Zechariah 1:16 states, therefore, this is what the Lord says. I will return to Jerusalem with mercy, and there my house will be rebuilt. And the measuring line will be stretched out over Jerusalem, declares the Lord Almighty. The measuring line in this case was representative of God's protection. Jeremiah 31 states, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when this city will be rebuilt for me from the Tower of Hananel to the corner gate. The measuring line will stretch from there straight to the hill of Gareb and then turn to Goah. Emphasizing the purpose, verse 40 concludes, the city will never again be uprooted or demolished. I mentioned last time, there are those who believe the temple made mention of in Revelation 11 is a future physical temple to be built in Jerusalem in which a remnant of ethnic Jews would worship. And such a belief is problematic because it assumes a revival of the sacrificial system. But that can't be. Hebrews 10 emphasizes that Jesus fulfilled and set aside the sacrificial system, and it's not to be reconstituted. Now, if, however, we understand the temple to be the spiritual temple, made up of believers in which God's presence dwells, then this prophetic action of measuring actually makes a lot of sense. The inner courts and the altar are measured, implying that we are spiritually secure. John is told in verse 2, but exclude the outer court. Do not measure it because it has been given to the Gentiles. They will trample the holy city for 42 months. Secure, but not immune to suffering. This message is like the message Jesus spoke previously to the church in Smyrna. Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. He goes on in verse 11 to encourage them that those who are victorious need not fear the second death. Now, the length of time differs. Most of us would choose 10 days over 42 months. But in both cases, the time has a fixed end. And our very suffering reflects and connects us with the one we suffer for. Except he, Jesus, suffered infinitely more than we ever will. His suffering was for us the undeserving, and his suffering purchased for us the very salvation that holds us fast. Thus, while we do not look forward to 42 months of trampling, we need not fear it. Thanks be to God, a measuring line has been stretched across us that will never be broken. Have a blessed week.